All right, that song you heard was from Stryper and called Free. And that came off their To Hell with the Devil CD back in 1986. And they got a lot of controversy for that name, but as far as I'm concerned, To Hell with the Devil, okay? And that's where he's going to end up anyways. So, I don't understand why people had such an issue with that name, but maybe it's because they had the word hell in it, you know? The Bible's got the word hell in it. Of course, that causes controversy too with unbelievers, but that's their problem. But anyways, that's that, and I'm gonna, like we started yesterday, I want to talk about the prayer requests. I got 3 new ones today, and we have a minister in our organization, the PEC, that her name is Jenny, and she helps out at a halfway house for women that are struggling, and they maybe got out of prison and had some drug issues and everything. So be praying for her ministry there. And with this whole coronavirus thing going on, her and her husband run a small business, and that's kind of hard to do too. Okay, they're contractors, so keep them in prayer for that. The second prayer is, we're in fellowship with a lady that has some liver issues, and she's been dealing with this for a long time, but then she broke her femur last summer, and the medication she has to take for the pain is conflicting with the liver, so this is making it even much worse, okay? So pray for a complete healing of this lady, okay? And my third request is that, we keep everybody safe during this time, and I know there's still going to be more deaths. I really believe that God is trying to get the world's attention, because there's no virus that has ever covered the entire globe like this that I've ever seen. Some that came close, like the Black Plague back in 1350, where it killed like a third of Europe. But because we have transcontinental travel now in this day and age, it's easy to get from one place to another very fast. And if you looked at the map, you'll be able to see that New York was hit hard, Orlando, Seattle, LA. Why? Why are these 4 areas? It's because that's where the major travel of people come in and from other countries. They're entry ports to this country. So let's just make sure people, I want to pray actually that people will start playing it safe and staying home. Where am I at? I'm at home, okay? So just be safe and do the right thing, and we'll get through this, okay? All right, study of Eve. Let's talk about her. She, an amazing woman. She was the first woman, and she made some mistakes. We're going to talk about that, but I'm going to reveal something I had never seen before until I wrote my book. And if you're following along in your book here, it's in page 21. Open it up. And we're going to look into that. Okay, the name Eve comes from the Hebrew name right here, Chawa, okay, which was derived from the Hebrew word chawa, meaning to breathe, okay? And there's also another related word, chaya, which is meaning to live, okay? Pretty cool. Eve was not born. This is one person that was not born. She was actually created out of the rib of Adam. And if you remember the video that I did about Adam, there was this talk and this thing going around that to this day, man is still missing a rib from his side because of that. Well, that's a false thing. That doesn't exist. Don't believe that. That is absolutely wrong, okay? I Googled it, okay? And so, so she was created around 4004 BC, according to my timeline that I got on the wall right behind me, in the Garden of Eden. Okay, she was created. It'd be like being created in heaven, being in the perfect. She was not born into sin. She was created in a sinless environment. Pretty awesome. And like the song that was playing, Free. If you want to listen to that whole song, I'd suggest going on iTunes or something. And it was talking about making a free choice, and that's what God gave Adam and Eve, free choice to choose. I mean, he gave the angels free choice, and a third of them left. And so they're bad, all right? But she's called Eve because she is the mother of all living, according to Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. Okay, I'll leave that up to you to read, but we are going to read some scripture in there. I always do. Okay, let's jump right into what happened. Okay, well, Eve made a bad choice. She listened to the serpent. He said, "You surely wouldn't die," which was true in one fact, but false in another, but false in both facts, actually. But she didn't die right away, but she died right away in another way, okay? And we're going to talk about those two deaths. There's two deaths that both her and Adam experienced. The first one, she experienced a spiritual death, a separation between man and God at that point. Because before that time, they walked in the garden, they had fellowship. There was, he could fellowship with them because they were perfect. They had no sin, okay? And there was none like this ever, okay? Well, once that happened, one day they're walking with God and fellowshipping with Him, and they're working in the garden in a awesome way, not in like, I have to work because I have to eat, but they're doing things together, and the next day, there's a separation. There's spiritual death there. All right, second death was a physical death, which didn't happen for many years later. The Bible doesn't say when she died. It only gives the account of Adam was 950 years when he passed away. But it doesn't really say when she died, okay? But nevertheless, we know she did, and it was because of her choice, okay? She did experience death. So also, two other things that happened. There was two curses that were brought on to all women. The first curse is everybody knows it. It was number one, pain in childbirth. Okay, we know that. And so in Genesis 3:16, it talks about how there was an intense pain that was going to happen here. So it says, let's read 3:16 here. To the women he said, "I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." Okay? Right here. All right. So even after 6,000 years of giving birth to children, we have still not been able to master or get the pain down to none, zero, okay? Even though there's epidurals out there, there is still pain involved in that, okay? And so we know that from the time Adam and Eve sinned until now, that curse is still alive and well, okay? Another one, number two, friction between husband and wife. This one is not so evident, okay? Because that part is in where it says, "Your desire shall be for your husband." And if you're reading that thinking, well, wait a minute, that's not a curse, especially to men, because I want my wife to desire me, okay? But that's not what it's talking about, okay? And so we're going to talk about that. It's different ideas, and this is basically she's going to have different ideas than Adam. All women are going to have different ideas than their husbands or men, and there's going to even be confrontations. But ultimately, it states he is going to be charged over her. All right. So how did I get this from Genesis 3:16? So as God pronounces judgment on Eve for her part of the transgression in the garden, He says, "Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." Okay? So you would think, well, obviously, when I get married to my husband, if you're a woman, okay, you're going to have a desire for him, but it's not the same. All right? This verse has puzzled a lot of people in the past, and kind of did me until I really dug into it and researched it and understood the verbiage that was being written here. Okay? So the Hebrew phrase in question does not include a verb and is literally translated toward your husband, your desire. Okay? Since this judgment is predictive, the future tense verb will be, okay, is added for clarity. Your desire will be for your husband. The most basic and straightforward understanding of this verse is that women and men, would have now an ongoing conflict between the two. In contrast to the ideal conditions in the Garden of Eden, the harmony between Adam and Eve, there was a relationship. It was a good one. It was a harmony where they're pretty much both equal. Okay, but from that point on, would include a power struggle. Okay, and if I know a lot of you are not into looking at other translations other than the King James, that's okay. I'm okay with that. Each of their own. But if you go in the NLT, the New Living Translation, it actually is a lot more evidence. It says, you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. And that's the way it should have been. And, I'm finding in the later translations, especially the ESV, and there's a lot of people who disagree with me about that, they were more accurately translated because we had better technology and better understanding than Greek and Hebrew. Now, when the King James was translated back in 1611, it was kind of like a space race. King James was trying to be the first one to translate into English, and the Guggenheim Bible was the first one to be printed in a book form. And so, as time has gone on, we have better technology to be able to give better translation in the later translations. But there's going to be people out there to totally disagree, and I'll just say, okay. I don't get upset about it. I don't argue about it. I don't debate about such things like that, because bottom line, we know that John 14:6 says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. So as long as we all understand that Jesus Christ is the only Savior, that's where it really comes down to it. But this is where I get this, okay? And I'm going to tell you now, some men take this and other scriptures way too far. In fact, they take it all the way to the fact of controlling their wife, and where their wife feels belittled, okay? As a man, you really need to memorize Ephesians 5:25, bottom line. Now, let me tell you something, okay? If I was just like those other men, I'd be out here in this office a lot more than I'd be in the house, okay? I mean, that's just absolutely stupid to try to rule over your wife as king. And how it worked with Esther. Just going into her husband's court and into his presence could have got her killed, and she's the queen, And some men go out on a limb like that. Well, I'm telling you what, you like to cook your own dinner? Because that's what's going to end up happening. You get a big head about yourself like that. And I don't mind fixing my own dinner, but my wife does a much better job at it than I do. So, when I say she's my queen, I treat her like a queen, okay? So let's read that Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, okay, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church, and he gave himself for her. Okay, so how did Christ love the church? Well, he was extremely humble. First, he comes as a baby in a manger. And then he is baptized by John. He washes the disciples' feet. He serves people. He's all about serving. And so if he is good enough to love the church like that, then we are good. Then we are more than good enough to honor our wife. And so I'm just sending out a courtesy note to all men that if you don't honor your wife, you will suffer. Okay. No, and then there's probably a Stryper song for that. After 40 years of them being in ministry the way they do that. So, hey, keep tuning in, and God bless, and you guys keep rocking on.